Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Inflation is rising at its fastest rate for nearly 4 years. The cost of living, as measured by the Consumer Prices Index, went up by 2.9% in the year to May. With wage increases failing to keep pace with the rise in inflation, many households are feeling the squeeze. Our economics editor, Kamal Ahmed, reports.
Whether paying for a foreign holiday, finding the money for the electricity bill, or buying your children new clothes, there was only bad news today. Rising prices, which have seen inflation increase from 0.3% this time last year to 2.9% today, the highest for 4 years. That rise in prices is biting. Martin Jackson is a nurse in Barnsley. The government has capped his pay since 2010.
Just for 1 year we might be able to manage, but because it's been over several years and the cost of living's gone up significantly over that period, we're finding it year on year more and more difficult to manage finances on a weekly and monthly basis.
On every high street, higher prices, largely caused by the fall in the pound linked to Brexit uncertainty. Real incomes are dropping, and at the same time the government is still cutting benefits, public sector pay. Austerity is still with us. It was Nick Timothy, Theresa May's former all-influential chief of staff, who I think made the most significant intervention on this issue at the weekend. He said the public were tired of austerity. It's a message that has cut deep with this government. Tired indeed, and many put the surge in support for Labour last week down to that weariness, despite evidence that controlling the public finances rescued in part the economy. For supporters of a different approach, it's time for a change.
We've had 10 years of austerity, and with it, real economic failure and weakness. My hope is that finally this defunct economic theory will be put to one side and government will have the sense to understand that the public sector needs to play a role in reviving the private sector.
The PM trying to knit together a governing agreement with the DUP which could see the end to planned cuts in winter fuel payments and guaranteed pension increases of at least 2.5%. But take care on spending. A warning from George Osborne's former chief of staff.
Well, the deficit's much lower than it was, so if we ease up now, we'll probably be okay for a while. But at some point, if another shock hits our economy, we could find ourselves vulnerable, and we would really have repeated the mistakes of the past.
It's a hot and toxic mix. Falling real incomes, rising prices, and a government unsure of its economic direction. Expect less on balancing the books and cutting those debts, and more on higher government spending to make everyone's life a little easier. Kamal Ahmed, BBC News.
Now, the cost of living has soared to its highest level in 4 years, increasing the squeeze on consumers. Inflation in May rose to 2.9%, higher than expected, fueled by the rising cost of things like food, clothes, computers, toys. It means prices are going up faster than wages for many people. And there's more pressure on businesses who have to cope with rising costs, as our business editor Siobhan Kennedy now reports.
There's no sugarcoating the impact of Brexit on this shop in Watford. Most of Paul Kiff's sweets are imported from the US. And with the value of sterling down nearly 20% since last June's referendum vote, his prices have risen accordingly.
We've had quite a big increase, about 20%. The bags are getting smaller and the sweets that are in them are getting a lot smaller.
Really? So just show me, in bags like these, things are getting smaller?
In these ones, say like the American hard gums, they'd normally be a good half full for £1, and now they're a quarter full for the same £1.
And you've noticed that?
Yeah, big time.
Do you see these pricing pressures easing off at all?
No, because I think there's an awful lot of uncertainty with Brexit, you know, and what they're saying in Europe about how they're going to make it hard for us and such likes, and I think the prices will keep on increasing.
There had been hopes that prices would stabilise this month. Instead, another unexpected rise to their highest level in nearly 4 years.
What's particularly worrying about today's figures for the high street is the broad brush nature of the price increases. From food and clothing to toys, furniture and electricity, prices are rising across the board, and that's tightening the squeeze on living standards as wages remain stubbornly low. On top of that, uncertainty around big issues like Brexit is rising.
And our weekly shop used to be 40 quid, it is now above 60. So it's gone up by £20. Strawberries are in season now, but pannet of strawberries is £2. I think pannet of strawberries should be 50p in season.
Just about everything in the supermarket, and what hasn't gone up has got smaller. So they're still getting you in some way.
If you go shopping and you think you've chosen wisely, and then you get the bill and you think, what do I spend my money on?
Here's the problem. The pound fell dramatically after Britain voted to leave the EU, pushing up the price of imported goods. In response, inflation has risen relentlessly, from close to zero then to today's 2.9%. The Bank of England was expecting inflation to peak at 2.8 later this year, so that forecast is already broken. On the plus side, rising input costs for manufacturers are beginning to stabilise, and oil prices, which have a huge impact on inflation, are now decreasing. But low levels of wage growth means incomes are effectively falling.
What this means is a real double whammy for both pay and benefits. It means that people's take-home pay will be worth less, and also people who are in receipt of benefits and welfare will see less receipt of those as inflation rises.
Today's figure will put more pressure on the government to rein in austerity and perhaps even start spending. Pressure too on the Bank of England to do its job and bring inflation back down by raising interest rates. But it knows, with an economy slowing and those all-important Brexit negotiations looming, to raise rates now could make a bad thing worse.
Siobhan Kennedy reporting, and there was potentially more bad news for the economy today as EU authorities announced proposals to relocate the lucrative euro clearing business away from London after Brexit. The city is currently the centre of the multi-billion-pound market, providing thousands of jobs. It involves a third party acting as an intermediary to financial trades. But the EU is worried these would no longer be under its regulation after Brexit.